Welcome to One Day Contract, the Panthers talk show where each week we're joined by a new personality who we've signed to a one-day contract to join the show. One Day Contract is a proud part of the Riot Network, powered by Ortho Carolina. Joining us on the One Day Contract this week, Josh Parcell, host of Middays on WFNZ and a huge fan of silly games during a show. First things first with Cam. Is there another quarterback in this league that has to fight for his job more than Cam does?
I think it's an absurd question inside the building. Outside the building, for whatever reason, it's persisted. But there's no other MVP that apparently is subject to losing his job the second a guy that wears a single-digit number walks on the practice field more than Cam Newton. That's for sure.
It's funny that the team has kind of constructed their roster in order to not have that be an issue for 7 years. Like they brought in Derek Anderson, and then they just kept him. So it was like, there's guys, just in case you're wondering, Derek Anderson is not going to, like in 2016, the year after they went 15-1, but Cam didn't jump on that fumble, and we made that gif about it. Derek Anderson's not going to be taking his starting job. Don't worry. And then it was like, well, Derek's retired, so we got Taylor Heineke. Nobody's thinking that Taylor Heineke. And now as soon as they go out and spend any draft pick on a quarterback, people are like, oh, we got a little bit of a quarterback controversy. And it's like, I get it that you want to show that your quarterback's healthy. We're going to talk about live streaming and whether that's a good idea. We're not live streaming the show. It's like they want so desperately to be like, no, I know in case Undisputed wants to talk about Will Grier, Cam's good. He's got the new mechanics. He didn't win the MVP 4 years ago. He hasn't broken a ton of NFL and franchise records with his old crappy mechanics. Now he's a brand new quarterback.
I mean, he is the franchise. He's been the franchise, and he'll probably continue to be the franchise after what we've seen in the last month. I think fans feel a lot better after watching him get out and actually throw the football, which I've never seen a more scrutinized minicamp practice than the one about 2 weeks ago here in Charlotte. But keep this in mind. They're the only team in the NFL that has not drafted a quarterback from 2011 to 2018. I mean, Will Grier was the first quarterback they drafted since Cam. And that's interesting because Cam's certainly not the only quarterback in the league who's a franchise QB. But yet every other team has seemed to draft at least one, if not multiple quarterbacks. Now, some of those, like I think the Packers have drafted a bunch of seventh-rounders. They did have the Brett Hundley one, or not Brett Hundley.
No, it was Brett Hundley.
Yeah, Hundley. Yeah. He's on like his fourth team now, so I forget. But yeah, so I think it was interesting in the sense that Carolina has gone from 8 years of we're not really worried about the backup job because we've got a durable quarterback who's obviously our guy, to you combine Cam obviously struggling at the end of last season, having the surgery, and then a quarterback's drafted. It's interesting. It's certainly not any sort of controversy, at least not this season. I think if you push the ball forward a little bit, if Cam were to struggle again this year, there's shoulder concerns, then you have an actual conversation. Anything between now and then is just people looking to create controversy.
To me, it's like, this guy has been, you mentioned durable, right? So he's missed, 3 games in the past 8 in his entire career, 4 games in his entire career?
Yeah, I think it's 3. He missed 2 obviously last year.
And then he missed 1 when he broke his bet when he had a car crash, when his car flipped.
Yeah, 3 sounds right.
Yeah, so
less than 5.
Exactly. So at this point, now that his shoulder has been an issue for the past 3 seasons, my question, and I think this is something that either gets ignored or people are kind of willfully ignoring it, is that we talked about in the first few years of his career that he runs so much. He takes so many big hits. Then there was the thing he doesn't take big hits. But is that, and the way that he plays is going to affect him going forward into his career. Now we are forward into his career,
right. And
are we at a point where it is actually affecting him? Or is it just TJ Watt hit him in the shoulder and he's going to be fine?
Probably a little bit of both, I'm being honest. That shoulder wasn't exactly 100% from the beginning of last year. Darren Gant, who covers the team and covers the NFL for Pro Football Talk, he was on our show as early as week 4 and was saying, that shoulder's not right. Darren's very plugged in with the team. So I trust Darren when he probably has some sort of inkling that something's going on. So I think it was a combination of maybe some mechanical things going on with him. He opens up his body a lot, things like that might lead to shoulder injury. I'm not a doctor. I would like to do a segment on my show called I'm Not a Doctor because none of us are. We like to break this down as if we are. But, maybe it was that. He's taken over 1,300 hits in his career, and that's over 400 more than the next closest quarterback in that span. So that is significant. I mean, that stuff is the kind of thing that, one hit here and there may not be a lot, especially to a guy who's 250 pounds. but the residual damage of that over time probably does add up. I mean, why wouldn't it? So Cam's incredibly durable. We've never seen a quarterback with his physical frame, his physical tools ever in the league. So he's built to sustain that more than a guy like RG3 who runs the ball a lot and he's out of the league basically in 3 years. So I think from that standpoint, yes, the style of play has probably contributed to a degree. Poor offensive line play, lack of wide receivers who he's able to get the ball out quickly to. I just think the Panthers are probably built better now to help Cam stay protected and stay safe and run the right kind of runs. I think that's the important thing looking at this season. You can design runs to help protect Cam and maybe limit the type of contact that he's taking. What you don't want is those off-script plays where he's running around, he doesn't have protection, and you never know where the hit's coming from, and you can't necessarily protect your body as much. I know the TJ Watt hit was a sack in the pocket, but you want to try to protect, I think, him from those unwanted off-script hits as much as possible.
At least the NFL protected Cam on that TJ Watt hit. That was the nice part about that, because we're concerned about player safety, and particularly a former MVP. I mean, that's the kind of guy you certainly want to protect in a primetime game. But it's not like we've endured that before. Thanks for that Super Bowl rematch week 1. No, Cam is. We are at the point where the mechanics do matter. He is at the transition point now, and whether it's today, tomorrow, whatever. But if he's going to have this second act in his career, he's already not the same runner he was because we're focused on the shoulder now. But before the shoulder, it was the ankle. And Cam is not the same speedster that he was as a young quarterback coming in this league. So he's already lost that a little bit. Now the shoulder a little bit. These are the things that add up. And as you become an older quarterback, you have to do a better job with the nutrition, with the mechanics, with all these others, with your preparation. This is a part of Cam becoming the adult quarterback. And I'm not saying he hasn't been before, but we've seen guys like Steve McNair who have had to make that transition because the physical toll on their body over several years, and Josh mentions all the hits he's taken. If he is going to be successful now, it has to be more the threat of the run than the run, and it has to be him executing from the pocket. So do I care about the mechanics? Yes, because this is when it starts to matter more than it ever has before.
So much of Cam's career to this point has been pure athletic ability, and obviously the guy works incredibly hard. He has worked on his body. He has made a big deal over the past 3 years of the difference between he used to eat Twizzlers and candy all the time, and now he went from pescatarian and gluten-free to now he's vegan along with Gerald McCoy, and it's like that he has matured. But you're absolutely right. This is the start of a Cam Newton second act if there is going to be one. And whether you want to, however much you want to put into the new mechanics or not taking off and running as much or becoming this kind of Cam Newton 2.0, if he is going to play for 5 or 6 more years, that's what's going to happen. If he wants to sign the same contract that Russell Wilson did, a 4-year, $180 million contract, that has to come with a different type of play. Similar, you don't want to change Cam Newton, but at the same time, he has to show this year that he can get through the entire season completely healthy, that he is kind of ready to make that next step, because even Russell Wilson is a different quarterback than he used to be. But like Russell, if you look at Russell's contract, in 2023 when he turns 35 years old, he's going to have a $39 million cap hit. That is the kind of contract that Cam is going to be in line for. And if you feel comfortable giving it to him, he's going to have to show that progression. No,
I think that's a spot on point, and that's something that the Panthers front office, I guarantee you, has a very close eye on this season. As much as they love Cam Newton, and as great as he is and as important as he is to the Panthers, you also have to think about your long-term, viability as a franchise. And given the way last season ended, you want to make sure that doesn't happen again. And if it does, I'm going to have a lot to talk about on the radio for 4 hours a day, because it's going to be the question everyone wants to know is, do you give Cam that kind of contract at 31 years old? 31 for a quarterback, you're a spring chicken. These guys are playing until their late 30s nowadays, but not quarterbacks who play his style. And that's exactly leading into your point, is can he adapt in the second half of his career? Can the shoulder hold up? Does he run as much? Norv Turner told Albert Grier a few weeks ago that we still want to use Cam as a featured ball carrier. What does that look like? He's never averaged fewer than 6 carries per game in his career, even going back to last season. So is he going to be a guy that you reduce that down to 4 or 5? Is he still going to get 6 or 7? Like, those kind of things matter quite a bit. And, man, I can't wait to see what this is maybe the most pivotal season for the Panthers in terms of what direction this franchise is going to go that I can remember. You guys have probably been fans of the team a little bit longer than I have. I've been here for 5 years. Obviously know the Panthers before that, but really in depth for the last few seasons. And I don't know. I mean, can you remember another year where it felt like so much of the franchise hung in the balance in one season? I mean, head coach Ron Rivera under pressure. I mean, obviously Cam.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. This to me is a cornerstone season. I don't mean that in a positive, like this is the way we build around the season. This is they either turn a corner or they continue down the same path. And the blinker is not on for them. If you skip through the first 12 minutes, you won't understand that reference. But what's happening right now is they are either going to continue down the Cam Newton and Ron Rivera path with Marty Herney, or they're going to veer right, and we're going to spend a year talking about how Cam Newton hasn't signed a new contract, and then he's going to go and play in, let's face it, probably Atlanta. And please don't make this the trailer. Everybody will hate me. And it's gonna be a whole new like literally this is where the franchise either keeps going on this path or goes on this path.
Yeah.
If David Tepper is not committed to Ron Rivera and Marty Herney going forward, I don't know why you're switching this defense at this point in time. This is a time like if you think that they may be on the way out, then making a defensive switch and making a first-round pick like Brian Burns, if you're then going to switch back to a 4-3 defense, then you go, where is he going to possibly play? Like that to me is where we're, like you talk about prolonging the suffering. If you make these decisions with this defense and then you switch coaches, then what was it all for?
But to me, what they're doing, this all goes back to that kind of that hinge season that we're at right now. You have so many guys that their contract is signed for through next season or the season afterwards. Look at what they did this year in free agency. Darrell Williams 1-year deal, Bruce Irvin 1-year deal, Gerald McCoy 1-year deal. These are the kind of things that you maybe do when you need to win right now. Yeah. And if you're not going to win right now, then you're out, because that's the scenario for Marty Herney and Ron Rivera. And so that's why, to me, they're saying, okay, well, if this doesn't work, we can make a clean break and a clean reset at the end of 2019, and if necessary, an even cleaner reset at the end of 2020.
I think that's a great point. I think that's a really good point. I mean, they've kind of structured this roster so that they're flexible going into next season, depending on what happens. And, you mentioned the guys they signed this year, but a couple key players are coming up. I mean, James Bradbury coming up. Yep. I imagine that extension's going to get done before the season, but you never know. And Mario Addison. You also have Shaq Thompson, exactly. Yep. So there are a lot of guys on this team, key players, who either are brand new or have been here for a few years, whose contracts are over after this year. There's a lot that can change in going into 2020 if things go well, which they very well might.
Yeah.
I mean, this Panthers team absolutely capable of making the playoffs, and I think making a fairly deep run. I think that this is just it's a really pivotal year that could go. Man, it's just crazy how different this season could go. Like how many different ways this year could go. The schedule's kind of interesting. Like you get the Rams right out of the gate, and then it kind of eases up a little bit. Like some potential to get off to a pretty good start like last year. And the Panthers better hope that happens, because the second half of that schedule, I mean, between Green Bay and New Orleans twice, Atlanta twice, Indianapolis. I mean, I'm just doing this off the top of my head. I know there's another, couple games on the schedule. It could get dicey in the second half of the season. They need to get off to a good start.